Hello, everyone. My name is Nazarena Hauser. I am on the board of the Broward County Hispanic Bar Association. Every month, we highlight one of our Hispanic judges in the county. And today here with me, I have the honor of interviewing Judge Alberto Ribas. He has been unanimously selected by our board to be the Judge of the Month for the month of April 2021. Thank you, Judge, for taking the time to be here with me today.
Ms. Hauser, thank you so much. I want to thank the Broward County Hispanic Bar Association for this wonderful, wonderful honor and all the great work you do in our community.
Thank you, Judge. We appreciate it. Judge, if we can get a little bit of information from you about your Hispanic roots.
Yes, well, I'm Cuban American. I'm a first generation Cuban American. I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. Both my parents, obviously, since I'm Cuban American, are from Cuba. My mother and father fled the Castro regime. My dad and his family was able to get out shortly after Castro took power in Cuba. And my mother, very interesting, her journey to the United States is she came about a few years later after Castro took power. And my grandparents, her parents, made the very momentous, very serious decision. You can imagine having a teenager, and now you have this regime which is, indoctrinating youngsters in the school system with socialism, totalitarianism. There's really no human rights. People are being thrown in jail, properties being taken, and real estate, businesses, etc. And they had to make the very important decision for both my mom and my uncle when the opportunity arose for them to go without them. So my mom and my uncle came here through the Pedro Pan flights that was really orchestrated in large part really by the Catholic Church and trying to get children away from this environment, this abusive environment, this totalitarian environment for a better life in the United States. So that's why my mom made it here. She actually made it here and grew up, her teenage years into her young adult years without seeing her parents. And she didn't see her mom and dad and my grandparents until after I was born.
Wow, that sounds like very difficult. I can only imagine what your family went through. Judge, what was it like growing up in a Hispanic home? Any favorite foods? Anything you'd like to let us know about it?
Yeah, I mean it's awesome. I mean I'm it's interesting because we come from some such difficult situation, right? As I indicated, my mother coming to this country and really raising herself without her parents, if you will, with family obviously support, but without her mom and dad, and then becoming a young woman herself, marrying my dad, and then I come along, and then her parents fortunately can come back here to the United States, I should say. But I grew up just I'm incredibly lucky human being. I mean, I'm here speaking to you by technology through Zoom, right? Because of my grandparents, both sets of my grandparents, my maternal and paternal grandparents. Because this is part of the Hispanic culture, the strength of the family and the extended family is humongous, and it cannot be understated. And my grandparents had the foresight, the courage to send my parents here, and because of that, it's that butterfly effect. I am here with you because of that. And as far as growing up, because if I grew up in Cuba, we couldn't be able to talk, right? You can't talk, you can't speak your mind. There's a freedom of religion. There's ongoing human right violations as we speak to this day, and so a lot of folks don't talk about this. It's still ongoing. It's still after all these years. It's a repressive regime, and I'm bearing the fruits of growing up in this country, the land of the free, a land of opportunity, and the fact that I grew up within a Hispanic culture is just an amazing thing. I'm so grateful, and I grew up in a home with as you can imagine, with my parents, very strong personalities. Very strong family values. You're going to go to school, and you're going to get your education. You're going to work hard. And my dad worked 2 jobs when I was very young, basically around the clock to support the family. My mother did an amazing job of raising both myself and my younger sister, and also working as well part-time to assist the family financially. Just in a very, very strong Hispanic family that I grew up in. My grandparents, we always get together. We'd have a lot of family gatherings. Everyone would talk at the same time. You know how it is,
of course.
Right? And we're communicating somehow, but everyone's talking at the same time. Very loving, very supportive. as far as foods, you mentioned foods. I mean, my abuela, my mom's mom, who's passed now, she was in her early 90s, she's passed away, but she would make the best ropa vieja. I love ropa vieja, and she would make the best ropa vieja. My mom with arroz con pollo, los frijoles negro. It's just traditional, los tostones, maduros, moros, flan. It just goes on and on and on as far as the food. The food is obviously very rich, just like the culture.
Yes.
Kind of an example of a culture is the food. But I'm just so blessed to have the parents that I did, the grandparents, the family that I have, extremely supportive, and I stand on their shoulders here because of them.
Absolutely, Judge. And because of your parents and your grandparents' courage and how supportive they were of you, it I'm sure propelled you to become an attorney. And can you tell us a little bit about that process? What motivated you to become an attorney?
It's really good. And I'm going to start back a little bit. I'm in high school. I went to public schools pretty much my whole life. And then I was in the 8th grade. When I was in 8th grade, it was junior high school. Now it's middle school, right? And then my mom's like, why don't you take this entrance exam for this high school in Miami? It was Christopher Columbus High School, the private Catholic high school, all-boy high school. And then my mom's like, what do you take? So I took it, and then I transitioned there. So that was a sacrifice for my parents to pay tuition. But they made that sacrifice because they wanted me to get, they wanted me to go there. They thought it'd be good for me from an educational standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint. And to go there and to help me prepare for college. And I went there, and I was fortunate enough to do pretty well there. And then, I'm sitting here. There's no college tours when I grow up, right? There's none of this stuff. You don't go visit colleges. My cousin, Pepito, he went to University of Florida. Good enough for him, good enough for me. Sight unseen. So I applied to Florida. So that's my journey. I made it to Gainesville. And I always say, I kind of said this before, I think in another speech previously, but I looked at it. My mom's like, what county is this? And I'm calling her on the phone. There was no zooming. I'm just going like, Mom, it says, I'm looking. It goes, Alachua. So it's Alachua.
Alachua.
That's where I read it. Okay, Alachua County. Alachua County. Okay, that's where you're at. So my friends were heard this Alachua. No, it's Alachua. Alachua. Clearly, it's not Alachua. It's Alachua. It's Alachua.
Great.
So anyway, so I made it to the University of Florida. I first wanted to be a business. Not to get to your question, that's kind of the setup. I'm sorry.
No, you're right. Of course it was.
So I'm like, how do I get into the law? It was by happenstance. I wanted to be a business major, and then I took some economic courses. I love the theory of macroeconomics and how markets work, supply, demand. I just thought it was so interesting. But then I got into microeconomics and all the nuances and the math. And I lost my passion for business. I'll never forget, to this day, I remember I went to see and I'm so thankful for him. I went to see a guidance counselor at UF, and I said, look, here's what's going on. I'm not sure. And he goes, have you ever thought about political science? I'm like, what do you think about that? I'm like, politics are pretty cool. Yeah, maybe I'll take some of those classes. That evolved into pre-law classes. And then that's why I found my passion for the law and to go to law school. And then from there, I went to law school. I went locally. I went to UF for undergrad. I went to Nova locally here. And then how do I fall into being, because before I became a judge, am I going to the next question? Am I going too much here?
No, absolutely
okay.
not.
All right. I don't want to take all your questions. So what happens, so how do I go from basically law school to where I'm at now? And I can tell you when I went to law school, and it's funny because I didn't think about it, and I reflect back now in time is I did an internship at the state attorney's office here in Broward. And it really, being a prosecutor and assistant state attorney really appealed to me, to my character. In other words, do the right thing in each case, right? I know it's subjective, but that's your goal. You represent the community, the people, and your job is to do the right thing for the right reason in every case. And that really appealed to me. What appealed to me is doing it in a fair way, in a right way, to follow due process, to follow the law. As a prosecutor, to strike hard blows, but not foul blows, right? To follow the law, to have mercy, to have an understanding, to treat people with respect. And it just, that's the job. It really is. If you can do it right, that's how you do it. And it appealed to me. But now as I look back, I know why it appealed to me, because that was taken away from my family, right? In Cuba. And there was no due process. We talked about the human right violations. If you say you don't like Castro, you get a knock on your door and off you go in the middle of the night.
Yep.
There's no due process. There's no arraignment, and you cannot be seen by your family for months. And then you go before some kangaroo court, right? The decision's already made up. Okay, and you're going to be served years upon years in settings that are atrocious and cruel. So I think that because of that background, it appealed to me to give back to our country, to our community for what it's given me and my family, but through public service. And also, I think to enforce and reinforce the due process of law, and to make sure that every citizen in our country who comes before the court, sometimes in extremely serious matters, other times not, to provide them either with help if they need it, or to protect our community as a prosecutor and seek a full prosecution of the case if it's a dangerous individual, so that way there's no other victims that person can victimize in the future. So I think that's how I got into the law, and specifically as I became a prosecutor with regards to, I think, that love for due process and to give back to our community.
Judge, how long were you a prosecutor before you became a judge?
20 years. I was a prosecutor 20 years. And, you start off as a baby prosecutor. I call it baby prosecutor court, right? You start off in misdemeanors in county court. So you start doing misdemeanors. They're serious, don't get me wrong, but that's where you start. That's where you cut your teeth. And the majority of those cases, you're dealing with misdemeanor battery cases, petty theft cases, misdemeanor possession of drugs like marijuana, resisting without violence, and a large bulk of DUI cases, driving under the influence. And then you just work your way through the office. And ultimately, when I left the state attorney's office, right before I became a judge, I was in the homicide trial unit for approximately 9 years, prosecuting very serious crimes, and capital homicides for close to a decade. That's what I did, and I've basically done everything in between, just more or less from those two standpoints.
And when were you? Well, Judge, let me take a step back. Were you appointed or elected?
Well, what happened is 20 years, right, has come and gone, and then I'm sitting here and like, you know what? It's being a prosecutor is a wonderful job, but it's also a very thankless job. It's a very difficult job. You don't have a client sitting next to you, right, saying good job and patting you on the back, thank you for representing me, thank you for giving your best. You don't have that, and you're constantly under the microscope. What you should have done, could have done. You're too harsh, not harsh enough. You acted too fast. You didn't act fast enough, and after a time, that honestly, personally, can wear on you. It really can. I love the job. It's an incredibly difficult job, and after 20 years, I was ready for a change. And then I started thinking to myself, well, where am I going to go to be able to continue with what I love to do? What other job can give me that passion to continue? Really, because I wanted to continue to serve our community. I think that's so important to give back and the public service, and also purposeful. I need to find I need to find something that really is purposeful to me as an individual. And I thought being a judge would help me with that. Again, due process, right? And all these things that kind of really are core values for me based upon my life experiences and my family's life experiences. So after 20 years, a position came open, right? And I went through the appointment process. That's what I did. And then I was appointed, my gosh, it's been what, 5 or 6 years? I mean, I'm going from memory here. It was 2000, I think it's about 2016, give or take. I think is when I was it before then? No, it was February 2016 is my investiture. So yeah, so I was appointed shortly before that in 2016 by the governor. And then my term was up 3 years. And then I was very fortunate to be reelected unopposed after 3 years. So I got another 6 years thereafter. So I've been on the bench now for what, 17, 18, 19, 20, about 5 years, give or take, approximately since then.
And where are you currently serving, and what division?
I currently serve in the dependency division. And of course, the next question, that, Ms. Hauser, because, as far as the work that you do, the fine work you do as an attorney, we're very fortunate as a judicial officer, but also in our community to have you. You do wonderful work for your clients. If I may give you a shout out, you do great work for your clients.
That, Judge. Thank you.
And no, that's sincere from the bottom of my heart. It's a team effort in court. But right now I serve in dependency court. What is dependency court? Basically, it's dependency court. And talk about going from one area of law to the other, right? I will tell you, and if folks are listening, I'm going to give you two advice now, is change is scary, right? But changes can be very, very good and can really allow you to grow as an individual, both personally and professionally. And I can tell you is, I was 20 years very comfortable. If I was going to criminal law, you can step right into that, and procedurally, substantively, from a jury perspective, you kind of, that would be in my wheelhouse. But I went into a whole new area, was the dependency, which is in essence child welfare cases. So what happens, for those of you who do not practice dependency, is where there are allegations of parents in a civil setting that there is abandonment, abuse, or neglect of a child or their children. The Department of Children and Families can step in. Even a private party can step in, actually, under the law, and come to court and file a petition and say, look, Judge, we think one, the child or children should be sheltered, taken away from the parents. And two, that they need services, to address, it can be mental health issues, it could be domestic violence issues, it could be substance abuse issues, all of these things, to try to address it, to help the family to be able to raise their children in a safe environment. So, and then sometimes you may have egregious conduct or cases that give rise, even after services, or if they're futile, even though they're provided, where they seek to terminate the rights of a parent. So we have, the full gamut there as far as trying to help families reunify them. We do it as well. Other cases we can't do that for whatever reason legally, then we can proceed to trial to terminate the rights of a parent. So those are obviously very serious, to say the least.
Very serious and difficult cases, I can imagine. I know how hard you work every single day to deal with this and try to make the best decision you can. Judge, do you sometimes have some happy moments like adoptions in your courtroom that kind of sometimes make it all worth it?
Absolutely. I mean, I can tell you there are happy dependency is a very serious, it's a very serious division. It's a great deal of responsibility. You want to make sure you get it right. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, we're human beings, right? And by definition, we're imperfect. And if we're imperfect, we're going to make mistakes. And the goal is to, when you make mistakes, to use it as a catalyst to improve yourself, to make better decisions in the future. So that goes without saying. But yes, adoptions are phenomenal days. Obviously, they're such joyous days where you can, as a judge, and I always tell this to adoptive families, the mothers and the fathers, I say, look, I'm playing a very small part. You're doing you're doing God's work, really, to have a child. Sometimes they're foster parents, sometimes they're relatives, sometimes they're non-relatives, to step in as the role of a parent, to give that child a better life, right? And I'm not just talking about financially. I'm talking about emotionally, spiritually, to show them right from wrong, so they can become good human beings and make our world a better place because of these individuals. So adoptions are just such joyous days because of that. To be able to finalize that as a judge for these families provides me selfishly with great joy. I will tell you also, wonderful days are when you see parents who work very hard and to overcome their demons. And these are demons a lot of times, and I want to highlight this. I want to take a step back. ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. A lot of these parents, all of them, were children at some point in time. They suffered adverse childhood experiences, and because of that, they're suffering as parents, as adults. Obviously, we have children now, and that we need to make sure those kids are safe. But we want to provide them with services to assist them. And when you can do that, and the parents work hard to overcome those past trauma experiences, and where they can safely parent their children, and they're reunified, and then we close a case. You see this, I see tears of joy, smiles, because they know they have overcome so much trauma through the services, and they've gained insight. And because of that, they're going to be wonderful, not only human beings, but safe parents for their children. And those are also joyous days.
Absolutely. Success stories, Judge. That is.
Absolutely.
Speaking of families and shifting gears just a little bit, tell us about your family, Judge.
Okay, well, I'm 53. I'll start off with the whole line. I'm 53 years of age. I am truly the luckiest human being in the world. I know everyone always says that, but I've been married for 20 years to my spouse, Stacy Ross, who also happens to be a judge. I always keenly say, and I think there's truth to this, she's the chief judge in the Ribas household, obviously. But so we've been married for 20 years, 21 years. It's easy. I'm cheating because we got married in 2000, so I can just add up the year. I know what year we're at. So.
Very lucky.
Yeah, we're coming up in 21 years. I'm just my best friend. She's incredible support, and she is an incredible mother to our children. We have 2 boys. Hard to believe I have an 18-year-old. I do, and I have a 16-year-old. They're growing before my very eyes. So and they're just outstanding human beings. People always say about the teenage years. Well, I have an 18-year-old, 16-year-old. I'm still waiting for the teenage years. They're just such good human beings. They're good souls. They're so empathetic, is the best way I can describe. I'm just so proud of both my sons. They care so much about the people around them and how they feel. And I think it's really. I know my dad. I'm biased because it's my children, but I think it's just so rare for someone so young to be able to have such an empathetic viewpoint of the world and of others. And I think if we had more folks like that, the world would be we would have so much love in the world. Empathy is such an important virtue to have. And if you have that, it's really hard to go wrong.
I love that, Judge. I love seeing how proud you are of your boys, and I'm sure that they are very proud of both you and Judge Ross, seeing everything that you guys do every day and how hard you work. So I love that. Judge, just to end it on a different note, What, if any, advice would you give to young attorneys who are just starting out, or maybe attorneys who are thinking that they want to be a judge like you one day? What kind of advice would you be giving them?
No, I think what obviously we always hear work hard. You know, you always hear that, right? Work hard, and that's important. Certainly, you want to be prepared before for your client. You want to be prepared for the court. So I think that goes without saying. Honesty, you know, as far as being forthright, being candid, that's incredibly important. But I think being pragmatic. I think pragmatism. And civility. When you have pragmatism and civility with how you advocate, I always say, look, you can be a pragmatist and agree on things. You can be civil with each other and still be a zealous advocate. They're not mutually exclusive. And I want to stress that to the young lawyers is, look, you can be the best lawyer in the world. You don't have to yell or scream. You know, you don't have to be, you know, have this kind of tone with witnesses or what have you. But you can be civil and you can be pragmatic in your approach, but yet be probably the most effective lawyer if you do it that way. So I think that's really, really important. It goes without saying that you can have such wonderful representation of your clients if you take that approach. That's just that's really a personal opinion, because I mean, there's really no wrong way to practice. It's just how you feel. At the end of the day, you have to be true to yourself, and that's my next step. You got to be true to yourself at the end of the day. But I also want to stress is work-life balance. A lot of lawyers, and you see studies when you read the Florida bars and all that, the journals, is, you know, lawyers having mental health issues, having a lot of substance abuse issues. Unfortunately, the suicide rate, et cetera, among lawyers is rather high. And I think work-life balance is incredibly important. Getting a law degree is such an important law degree. I think it's a wonderful degree. It helps you to think, to analyze, to have critical thinking skills. Whether you go into the law or not, that's an asset. But I think you always have to have a check-in with yourself from a mental health standpoint. And I always say a good check-in is, I call it the drive to and the drive back from work. When you're going to work and you're going back home, check in with yourself periodically. And are you getting tense? Are you getting irritable as you're going to work or coming from work? Are you having more days like that than not? Then you need to start analyzing to yourself, wait a minute, I'm getting irritable just going to work, or I really feel bad on going home. And it happens almost all the time. You got to sit back and say, okay, I need to look at maybe a different kind of law, right? Or a job within the law, or maybe something outside the law, because it's going to affect your mental health. It's going to affect your spirit. And when it does that, it's going to trickle down to your family, to your spouse, to your children, to your loved ones. And I think that's really, really important. The advice I give is always do a little kind of like mental health check with yourself, and don't work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's bad. You need to have balance. So that's the other thing. Enjoy time with your family. Enjoy time with what you love to do. Okay, whether it be meditation, going for walks, exercise, watching movies, whatever it is, have that part of your day, because you need to be able to enjoy yourself and not constantly work and be under pressure and being critiqued, which can cause a lot of stress.
Absolutely, Judge. I think every single one of us can benefit from that advice, really. Thank you so much, Judge, for taking the time to be here with me today. I know you have a very busy schedule, so we all really appreciate it. And thank you for all your work and your service in the community. And I know a lot of people really look up to you and admire you. So thank you for what you do every day.
Well, Ms. Hauser, I look up and admire you as well. So I want to thank you, for everything that you do. And I also want to thank the Broward County Hispanic Bar Association, the wonderful work that's done in the community, legal and otherwise, within that organization, to help folks, especially in Hispanics that come into the law. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and the support that we all get in the education. So I want to thank you all. Thank you for this great honor. I'm very humbled by it. As far as being Judge of the Month, that's awesome. That's really cool. And I hope everyone has a very good day. I hope everyone's very safe and healthy with your respective families during these trying times with the pandemic. So everyone take care. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. You too. Likewise, Judge.
Have a good day. Bye now.